Good day, and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast.
Episode 2, Euan.
Episode 2, we're here, we made it.
Yep.
Nobody asked for it, but we did it anyway.
Yes. It's a tricky second album now, Euan. A tricky second album.
It really is. We are, I don't want to say like you two.
Nah, well, please don't say that.
Right, good.
I might have to leave.
We're like Bon Jovi.
Right, I'm leaving.
I don't know what his second album's even called. I don't know what any of his albums are called.
Crossroads, man, that's one of them.
We're like Bon Jovi after Crossroads. I'm your host, Euan, and he's your other host.
I'm the main host.
Of course.
I'm Chris. And I've come up with a way of describing our roles in this podcast, Euan, which is that if this podcast was a ship, I'd be the guy up top who'd be steering the ship in between rocks and islands and stuff like that, trying to keep it on course. Whereas you'd be the guy down below in the engine room, just smashing holes in the side of the hull with a sledgehammer.
I'm so glad you went for a nautical analogy there. I mean, I was hoping I could be the stoker or something like that, doing something useful.
That's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. But, I take the...
You can't be trusted.
I just get my stoking shovel and wedge it into the cracks in between the... at the bottom of the boat. Leave some coal lying about.
You don't deny it, and that's why I kind of admire you.
Oh, it's nice of you to admire me, like, occasionally.
I admire your honesty. This is episode 2. So we did episode 1, and quite a few people listened to it, so thank you people for that. We also got some feedback.
Yeah, it was lovely to hear from Pawel again.
Oh, yeah, well, see, this is this bone that I wanted to pick with Pawel in the last episode, because he gave us some feedback, and it was, there was some constructive feedback in there.
Yeah,
but there was one thing in particular that I need to haul him up for, and it's because we did episode 0, and he gave it a listen. It was our sort of tester episode. He gave it a listen, and then he gave us some feedback, and one of them was about when I was talking about Shenmue, and Shenmue 3, the Kickstarter, had recently finished, and I was getting quite excited about it, and I talked at great length about the Shenmue series.
Yes, you got well into it.
And Pawel decided to give me some feedback on that, which was that, he told me that I should have said stuff about the records that Shenmue 3's Kickstarter broke and stuff like that, and then gave me a breakdown of all these sort of things that happened.
There's a lot of information.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to hold Pawel up for that, because he basically stole that from an email that was sent out to all the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter backers. And that email had all that information, almost verbatim, that like Pawel had written. Oh. And that email came out several days after we recorded episode 0, and it was pretty much on the day that Pawel listened to the episode as well. And he was telling me off for this, so I'm going to have to say, no, Pawel, bugger off.
You've been found out.
Yep, you've been found out, son.
Yeah.
So
you've been copying and pasting bits from emails and then trying to... It's gotcha journalism. It really is.
It is.
It's the internet age.
You might get a job for the Sun or something like that.
Yeah,
or,
well,
one of these clickbait websites.
Yeah.
So, what have we been up to, Euan?
Well, we've been keeping up with Rocket League. We've been getting into some actual online games. I think when we mentioned it previously on our sort of our test recording, we just happened that we've just been trying to play the league against the computer.
Yeah,
not having a lot of success there.
Sort of failing.
Yeah, we have really dominated the online matches.
Which was quite surprising. I thought when we went online we were going to get absolutely ruined.
It did seem like that. I want to make a special mention to a chap. I think were they like a German team or something? Because I seem to remember.
Yeah, I think they might have been some German guys.
And it was JC. I just wrote down JC011. I remember there being ones and zeros, but then other numbers. And he provided a very entertaining kickoff where he basically became the ball for the first 10 seconds of the match. It was we went in for the kick-off.
Yep.
He was basically battered straight into the air, landed in our goal, hit off our goalkeeper, and was knocked back up to the other end of the park, where he hit off me again, and then off one of his own teammates. And he stayed in the air for a good 10 seconds or so, I'm sure.
It was quite impressive.
Yeah, I just gave up on the game at that point.
Yeah, and just started hitting him instead, just like, this is much better fun.
This is a lot more fun. And you can go for that tactic if you want. It's definitely been seen.
But yeah, we have been playing a lot of Rocket League though.
Yeah,
and it's definitely like such an addictive game. It's something we talked about in episode 0.
So simple, but very much a kind of game where you feel like it's a skill to learn to play it, and any success is a real triumph.
Yeah, you get a good sort of satisfaction out of it, like once you start learning your positional play and stuff like that. You know, like somebody's going up that wing, they're going to knock it across, so I'll get into the box and get ready for this ball coming across, sort of thing. Just like in real football.
Oh, of course, yeah. I've been trying to adapt my role and become more of a utility player.
Oh yeah, I'm that sort of attacking midfielder role. That's the kind of role that I like to play.
You create a lot of chances.
I create my
and
own
you also
chances.
finish off a lot of the chances as well.
I just can't rely on any of you guys. But Rocket League's like game of the year for me, pretty much.
Absolutely,
so far.
yeah. That's a spoiler for you.
Aye,
all you people who just love game of the year lists in December. It'll be on the top of everybody's.
I don't think I'm on the committee for any of the official game of the year.
Oh, right. They sort of sometimes call you in as a talking head.
Yeah, well, they might. I'm hoping so.
It'd be nice.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
I think if we can get anything out of this podcast, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
To be a talking head next to like Lee Mack on a top 10 end of the year show or something.
Oh God, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Lee Mack.
Yeah, I don't know. Ian Lee.
Ian Lee. I think you have to go further down the alphabet.
Oh, right.
Get some more Z-list celebrities in
there. Yeah, we really need to scrape the barrel. I think, if the Living Network would take us, or UK Gold or something like that, then we'd be quite happy.
Well, on that cheerful note,
yeah,
let's move on with the podcast here. Yeah. So, what will we talk about first? So we just talked about Rocket League, which is a video game, but shall we switch it up a bit?
Let's delve into some board games.
Talk about some board games first.
So, first off, Chris, we're going to talk about Castles and Suburbia.
Yep.
2 games by Ter Alspach.
Ter Alspach.
Bezier games. I don't know any other games of theirs.
They've got a few.
Well, they're basically construction, two slightly similar construction themed games.
Yep.
Castles, obviously you're building castles, plural, and in Suburbia you're building a small town.
I think you're building a suburb of a city, I think, is the idea in Suburbia. I think that's how you'd describe it.
It didn't really seem like a suburb. Nah. You've got like the projects springing up. You've got a slaughterhouse in there.
One of the things that confused me is that why would a city need multiple airports the way that it does in Suburbia? But we'll get into that.
Yeah. We'll take these suburbanites to task.
So what we'll do is we'll talk about Castles first, and we'll talk about Suburbia.
Yeah, I think Castles.
And then we'll compare the two because they're both very similar.
All right.
And in Castles, you're building a sort of crazy castle. It's based on this guy called Mad King Ludwig, who basically built the castle that the sort of castles in Disneyland and stuff like that are all based on, those sort of fantasy style castles. He was a bit crazy.
Yeah, one of the many great board games that takes you to Bavaria.
Yeah,
whenever you're transported to Bavaria in a board game, it's always a good thing.
Indeed. Right, so what happens in Castles then, Euan?
Well, you're attempting to build this bizarre sort of maze-like castle.
Pretty much. Each player's building their own one.
Yeah, you're sort of individually trying to score points through building the best castle you possibly can. You have a sort of a market for your rooms, the tiles that come out of various different sizes.
Yeah, so you're building up your castle using all these different tiles.
Yeah,
right, and you've got a central market.
Yeah,
which you buy your tiles from.
Yeah,
but it's not as simple as that.
Well, no, the master builder denoted by the large and unnecessary Master Builder token,
Yep.
is responsible for basically determining the price of these at the start of the round.
Yeah.
The slight disadvantage there to the Master Builder being that he or she is also the last person to buy their
room. Yeah.
So essentially, everybody, once the Master Builder's decided how they want to price all the rooms, you then take turns in buying them and then placing them into your castle.
Yeah.
I mean, that really is it.
It really is. I mean, what happens is, I mean, you buy your room and then you've got to fit it into your castle somehow.
Yeah.
So you start off with this just little foyer room that has just got 3 doors on it. So you can put rooms coming out of that, and you can also buy hallways at any point if the rooms that are available are new to your taste.
Yeah.
If you don't want a really dark dungeon, then you just buy a hallway or a staircase instead.
Absolutely.
And you've got to fit these in, and they're really beautifully made. These tiles, they've really figured these things out. These tiles fit in a sort of like, if you've got OCD, you're going to love this. Like, it's unless you want to have a nervous breakdown about the number of open doors you have, because if you put a hallway in, you have loads of open doors.
If you start thinking about it like that, you're going to go insane.
Yeah. So like when you place these room tiles in, they've got little symbols in the middle of them, and they tell you, like, so one of them's just like a number of victory points you get just for putting that tile in. Yeah. But they'll also have something like, if you've put, like a room, say you put a room in and it's, say, a utility room, it might say in it you get a bonus if you put that utility room next to a living room.
Yeah.
And then every time that you build a living room next to that utility room, you'll score points for that. So you're really looking at how you can chain these things together, sort of thing. So you don't want to just throwing your rooms in randomly.
No,
You've got to
need to think
look at what's available and say, well, if I put that there, that'll score me some bonus points.
Yeah.
But I mean, you get bonuses as well for the tiles. So if you complete a room, you get, like, the rooms have all got some amount of doorways on them. Some of them have just got one. Some of them have got multiple. And if you manage to get a doorway in one room connecting up to the doorway in another, and you manage to do that for all the doorways in one room, you'll get a bonus for that. And that depends on the type of room it is.
Yeah.
So, just as an example, if you complete a food room, you take an extra turn immediately, which means that you can buy another room and put it in. I found that to be quite powerful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the last game we played, I used a living room, because I had one with lots of doors,
yeah,
and I basically kept sort of completing rooms off of it. And once you complete a living room, you get to rescore those points, and there was quite a lot of points in the rescoring on it, so that worked pretty well for me.
And when there's, like, 8 different types of room in this game, if you include the corridors, the hallways and stuff like that. So there are, like, 8 different types of bonus that you can get, and that's, like, pretty good. So you can really, like, like, if you just want to take loads of extra turns and annoy people, you can just keep building food rooms and completing them.
Well, yeah. But you've also got sort of objectives you can pick up throughout the game.
That's right.
There's cards that you can get that will basically, they'll score you a bonus based on maybe the number of a certain type of room you've got. If you've got more sort of outdoor ones, or it'll be based on the number of outdoor ones or the square footage.
Yeah. They've got a weird square footage mechanic in this as well.
There's a little symbol for that.
Yeah, a little symbol in each room that tells you how many square feet that room takes up. And some of the bonus cards say if you've got the most square feet of one type of room, you score 3 points or something like that.
In addition to that, you also have objectives that,
shared objectives
for the end of the game. So
so your bonus cards are for you alone.
Yeah.
But they're shared objectives that are there at the beginning of the game, so you can see what these objectives are, which can kind of switch the game up a bit every time.
Yeah.
Because those 3 objectives they stay the same throughout the game. Well, I think it depends on the number of players. I think it's 3 or 4 objectives, but it makes it quite interesting, because you can really see, like, if one of the main objectives is the most outdoor rooms, then somebody's really going for the outdoor rooms, and they're going to score a lot of points for that, and you might want to change your tactics to try and stop them from getting loads of points. And you can, like, really outprice the outdoor rooms to stop somebody that's getting lots of outdoor rooms from buying it without paying through the nose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as we were talking about before, I mean, I think the Master Builder sort of mechanic, that is really the main source of tension in the game. The rest of it, it's down to you, placing the rooms and how you're going to score that. But that's the point where you're all really competing, and you have to try and be a wee bit canny about it.
I think that's actually one of the things that takes about half the turn time up. I think it's just whoever the master builder is that round is sitting thinking about, Jesus, what am I going to do here? How am I going to price these to stop people from?
Yeah, and if you particularly want a certain room, you're trying to think, where am I going to put this that it's not going to be too expensive for me, but is also going to discourage everybody else from buying it as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
I found myself in that position quite a lot, and generally you end up failing.
I don't know, I've been reasonably successful with that, I think. I tend to, like, if... I probably shouldn't be telling you my strategy, but if there's a room that I want to build, I'll probably stick it in that sort of middle range sort of thing, and to make it look like I don't want it.
Aye. Yeah. You got a bit of reverse psychology. That's the classic game mechanic, really. It's the tactic that you can use.
So what about castles? We'll move on to castle. Sorry, not castle, Suburbia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Suburbia... a similar looking game board in terms of the cutout parts,
but pretty much identical.
Yeah.
The central
lots of large triangles, and places where you might put tiles that you end up not putting them because it's a pain in the arse.
Just get rid of those things.
You've got your market set up same way as you have in castles, except there's no player input in this. It's just the tiles come out and they move down the market. So maybe it's the idea that the longer a certain concept for a building's been about, the cheaper it is for you to buy it. But when you do buy them, you have to add on, so that you've got your ascending or descending, whichever way you're looking at it, your market prices. You have to add that then to your
to whatever the price is on the tile as well. So if a tile was, say, 5 generic money amount, money currency unit.
You have to assume that any a dollar amount in anything has to be multiplied by millions.
In this game, So if it says $5 on it and it's underneath the $10 bit, you've got to pay $15 for it. But then that tile will start moving down the market and getting cheaper as people buy tiles. Mm-hmm. So
well, I mean, you're sort of buying different tiles and you're around representing the different parts of the city, and it's a classic Sim City thing. You've got your industrial, your commercial, and your residential,
and colour coded the same way as they are in Sim City. So they've thought about that. Go for what people know you, and go for what people know.
Well, it makes sense.
But the thing is, these tiles in this game, they aren't sort of different shapes and sizes like they are in castles of Mad King Ludwig. No. They are all hexagons and they're all the same size, so they all just fit in really nicely next to each other. But I mean, one of the things about this game is that it can be quite fiddly, because all the different tiles, depending on what you buy, it changes. You've got two sort of things on each player's got two things. They've got a reputation and they've got an income. And every time you buy a tile, well, pretty much every time you buy a tile, those things are going to change. So, like, putting in lots of industry things is going to reduce your reputation. Because you're basically polluting the place.
But and it's always the classic thing that as well, where you generally can't put industrial location next to residential one. It's going to compound it even more.
It gives you some penalty if you do that. Generally, depending on what the thing is. So if you're building power plants or something next to houses, then the people living in those houses aren't going to like that, so your reputation will go down. But the other thing is that, but industrial things, those are good. They might reduce your reputation, but they'll increase your income because they're basically like factories and stuff like that. So you're going to get more money out of them. Mm-hmm. And you've got things like your commercial buildings generally just give you some sort of income, but that's really all they really do. Sort of thing.
Some of them will give you bonuses based on other types of buildings you've got. You do have to pay attention as you go to what you're building and how that's going to affect other buildings. There's also in this game, unlike castles, buildings that you might put down will affect other players or be affected by what other players have got.
And that's what I was saying about it being really fiddly. So it's like, you have to pay attention, because it almost feels like you're playing a sort of multiplayer solitaire, but you really have to pay attention to what everybody else is doing, because if somebody else puts in a certain type of tile, that might actually affect you, because you might have a tile that says, if somebody else builds, like on an airport for example, if somebody else builds an airport, then that changes your income and stuff like that. And
you have to stay on top of it, because it's pretty much impossible to backtrack and work out where you were before and then try and work out where you should be, because everything's constantly flowing and changing. There's a lot of games where you can maybe go, oh well, I should have had this or I should have had that. You really can't do that in Suburbia, and I think that's actually quite rare.
Yeah,
in a board game.
It really is. I mean, like you say, I've never played a game before where you can't actually just sit and figure out what the scoring situation is.
Yeah.
Because with the reputation, well, we should probably say the reputation actually, the higher your reputation is, that affects your population at the end of the round.
Yeah.
So if you've got a reputation of say 3, your population is going to go up 3 every round.
Yeah.
But that scoring board, so your population is essentially also your score. So that scoring board, when you're moving up that scoring board, there are red lines on the scoring board, and if you cross one of those red lines, your reputation and your income goes down by 1.
Yeah.
And that's why it becomes impossible to figure out what's going on.
Because you're always sort of either going to be losing or gaining something at any time.
So it gets to the point where, like, if have got a high reputation and a low income, you're getting lots and lots of population every round. And that's also going to make your income go down even more because your population's increasing, which will reduce your reputation and your income, and you can get to a point where you basically stagnate, which has happened to me. And I think we've played this game twice now, and it's happened to me both times. And I don't know how I'm getting myself into these situations.
Well, I mean, thinking back to it, it's obviously like one of the things with the residential tiles is a lot of them will give you an immediate population increase. So it's like just taking victory points in any other game, but the effect is that you overshoot your population, you're going to start losing income, you're going to start losing reputation. You have to plan, you have to kind of like consider very carefully where you're going, and sort of building kind of stages essentially.
So when compared to castles, Suburbia, like the way that the points are scored, in castles you get your bonus cards, and you've also got these central tiles that are shared. Yeah. But in Suburbia you've only got the central tiles, and at the start of the game you get one of those tiles as well.
Yeah, everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one, but you don't get any more. Whereas in castles you can get bonus cards by completing utility rooms. In this you've just got your one tile and the ones that are shared. And you score like extra points at the end of the game if you complete the objective on that tile, and they can be things like, the capitalist is fewest residential buildings. You score 20 points at the end of the game if you've got the fewest residential buildings. You've got stuff like the libertarian. You've got the fewest sort of museum civic buildings.
I hate culture.
Billionaire, straight up, just the most money.
Yeah.
Industrialist, the most industry, that kind of thing, and. So, I mean, that, again, just like in castles, can really change the way that you play the game. It can make it different every time, because if you want to get those bonus points, you're going to really be focusing on one particular aspect.
Yeah.
And I quite like that about Suburbia. I mean, when we look at the two games side by side...
initially you kind of get this idea that, they're similar theme, but they're very... Quite different games, really.
I get a similar sort of feeling from them, I think, because you're building up. It's sort of like you're expanding in this game. But I think in Castles is a much more laid back game. I think Suburbia is more your thinky game than
Castles. You can probably play in about 45 minutes to an hour quite easily.
Yeah,
get it done. Suburbia will probably take you. It's not an epic game, but it will take you a wee bit longer.
I think so.
Yeah.
It definitely has in the games that we've played. I think we've played Castles 3 or 4 times now.
Yeah,
Suburbia a couple of times.
I've only played Suburbia the once, I think, with you possibly.
Right.
Maybe a second time.
I think I've played it twice, and I definitely think this Suburbia is just a longer game, just because of how much thinking you have to do in it. When you've really got and this is the fiddliness as well. It's my one sort of minor gripe about Suburbia is the fiddliness in it.
Yeah,
just constantly having to be aware of what's going on. So if you get distracted while somebody's building something, you can really miss something quite easily.
It's difficult in some board games like that as well, where you find yourself concentrating yourself and you kind of start to disconnect from the game.
Yeah.
But then what I'd say there is maybe that's probably a good thing to some extent. The game kind of forces you to be involved.
Focused. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they're both games that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I'm glad I invested in them.
Yeah.
I think if you had to pick one, Euan, which one would you pick? Go on.
Go
on, I'm putting you on the spot.
Do you know, that's
here.
a really tough question, because we've been sitting here talking about Suburbia, and the more that we've been sort of discussing like the individual elements of it, I'm like, I really like that game. I think
really want to play it again.
I know, and I'm missing it. I'm like, I could really do with it.
Well, like I say, I think castles, if you want a more laid back experience, and a bit funkier, because some of the rooms in them are quite amusing.
Absolutely.
But I think Suburbia, if you want a more sort of like involved gamers game sort of thing, would be my verdict on them. So, what about yourself?
I think, I think I'm going to go with Suburbia as probably my edging out as my favourite of the two. Probably it is more complex and
picking a favourite child, Euan, eh?
Aye, well, the castles of Mad King Ludwig, I think they can probably cope on their own. They've probably got some heritage society, able to mollycoddle them. There's
I think one of those real life castles that guy built was actually nominated to be a modern wonder of the world.
It should be.
It looks crazy.
The state of some of the things you end up building in that anyway is...
That's true, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't put a utility room next to a living room, because you've got our utility room here. We've got a washing machine in there.
This
it's
guy
noisy. You try to watch the TV and the washing machine.
This guy saw the big picture, though.
Well, yeah, maybe he did.
He saw things that we couldn't see.
Aye.
He was crazy.
Aye, he saw little gnomes at the end of his bed telling him to make castles in Bavaria instead of just drinking beer like everybody else.
Right, it's arbitrary rating time, Euan.
So,
castles.
Castles, I'm going to give that 5 utility rooms, 5 small utility rooms, each with its own washing machine, out of a total of several thousand rooms of chambers within this castle. But that's not to say...
I wondered where you were going with that.
That's not to say these utility rooms have any less significance than any of the other rooms, and ultimately it's a good game. Yeah. I lost myself in that rating there.
I think you did. I'm going to give Suburbia 6 libertarians out of 7.
All right.
I think.
God.
So that's quite a few libertarians.
Right, yeah.
More than most people need.
And hopefully we can just march them all off into the woods and let them go and live naturally.
More than most people asked for, I should have said. Let's move on to something a bit more epic.
Yeah, well, this is one that we've probably got a lot to say about, or it's a lot to process with regard to this game.
How long did this game take us, Euan?
6 hours.
6 hours. 6 hours of pure fun. I say.
Yes, I say. I mean...
Right, what game is it? Let's see what game it is.
Let's just go to the game. So, it's... Well, for starters, it's a Games Workshop.
Euan, what is it called?
Game.
Tell me what the game is called.
I don't know why I'm so resistant to saying that it's called Forbidden Stars.
I think you didn't enjoy this.
Do you know, this is the thing I found myself afterwards, once we'd kind of been through this ordeal, that I thought...
Once you processed it.
Yeah, I was like, if I was to play a game of this immediately now, I would probably be a lot more in command of what I'm doing, I would probably enjoy it a lot more. But I'm not about to sit down for... I imagine a second round wouldn't have taken 6 hours, but it would still have been a pretty lengthy game. It reminded me actually a little bit of Android, in terms of how it just sort of... You don't think it's going to suck you in as much as it does, but it does take a long time to get through. I think in any time you play it, probably it would be. So,
it's Forbidden Stars.
Yes, it's a Warhammer 40,000 based in that universe.
Which we should point out is something that we don't really...
We don't play those games.
Yeah, we're above that.
Sorry, Games Workshop fans. Let's get contentious with the Games Workshop fans straight away.
I'm going to take that back. We're not above that. I mean, if you want to spend half your income on little plastic miniatures, and then just for the Games Workshop to change the rules every couple of years and all the models, so you have to rebuy them all, that's entirely up to you.
Way to build it up and then undercut it, Chris. I like that. Yeah, no, I think this was an interesting, and I do, there's aspects of that, like, aesthetically, just that universe that are quite cool, the whole space marines and everything. Yeah, there is an appeal in that, and it's because it's basically a space-based strategy war game.
I'm tempted to call it a grand strategy game, but I don't know if it's quite in that league with Twilight Imperium and stuff like that.
It's getting there, but I think that's maybe not what the kind of game it is.
It's somewhere between Eclipse and Twilight Imperium, probably.
Yeah, I think so. It's you're basically there's 4 races, I believe, so far. I don't know if there's plans for
it's Fantasy Flight. There probably will be.
Oh, I'm sure there will. There's 4 races so far. Anyway, you've got your classic orcs. Is it just Ultramarines or just Space Marines in general?
Specifically,
right. Okay,
because those are the ones that all the fanboys love.
Ah, yeah. Well, they're cool.
I'm sounding really bitter.
You're really not. I'm loving it. I'm glad you're really getting in among these.
I've got an emotional response to this. I don't know where it's coming from.
Have you now? Did you ever collect any of these models, Chris?
Not 40k.
Right.
I admit when I was 12.
Right.
And I would like to emphasise 12.
Right. Okay. You don't. I did see again. You're getting a wee bit defensive here.
I did really annoy my dad by taking up some Warhammer. And asking him to buy me models and stuff, which he didn't.
Of course
he basically bought me the base games, but wouldn't get me anything extra. And the only way that I actually managed to fund my Warhammer thing was that I won £100 on a fantasy football thing when I was 12 at my dad's work.
Oh well, yeah.
I came first.
So was he happy with you spending it on elves?
Well, that was the thing. I remember telling him we're going to Games Workshop and I'm going to buy whatever I want. But the thing is, I didn't actually buy many models because I ended up buying both Space Hulk and Warhammer Quest. Which I actually think was a brilliant investment.
That's probably a much better thing. I think there's tight games in that set in that universe. But there was a couple we were going to mention just briefly. It was obviously the is it Blood Angel? Oh, the card game.
Space Hulk, Death Angel, I think.
Death Angel, yeah. I think it's based on Space Hulk, but just sort of.
It's a card game that's basically Space Hulk.
Yeah,
but that's another one of the Fantasy Flight ones. So Forbidden Stars is a Fantasy Flight. Excuse me, Fantasy Flight Games Workshop game, which Fantasy Flight have got the rights to make their board games for them.
Right.
And they've made a few, so we've got Forbidden Stars, which is one we're talking about now, but there's a couple other ones that we've played, which are Space Hulk, Death Angel, and Blood Bowl Team Manager.
That's a good one.
Which, they're both quite good games. They're both card games, but they're both... Yeah, I really enjoy them, actually. So, Forbidden Stars. I say but there.
Yeah, well, I suppose
I really enjoy them, but
we really need to get into Forbidden Stars here.
Forbidden Stars. Yeah, well, we're explaining the races. So we've got Orcs, Ultramarines. We have Eldar,
Eldar, and Chaos.
Yes. So your 4 classics, I suppose.
They all have unique abilities based on their sort of racial attributes, and your sort of the game board itself that you start on is modular. You've got lots of different sort of. So you'll have a home world. Yeah, that's right. Set up.
We used a sort of beginner setup. So there's a beginner's. If it's the first time you've played the game, they recommend you set the board up this way because apparently there's a really convoluted way of setting up the board if you want to make it completely random. You set up the board. It's basically like the board is just a bunch of square tiles, and each tile has got 4 spaces on it. And if you're playing with the full complement of 4 people, I think you use 16 tiles. Right, so the board is basically, it's a load of square tiles, and I think you play the full complement of 4 people, you play with 16.
Yeah.
Yep. And each square tile has got 4 spaces on it. And these spaces can just be like, they can have a planet on it, or it can be empty space.
Yeah.
And you set up the board, like I say, we use the introductory setup, so you start with a bunch of objectives on the map. So each race has got its own objective things, and they're just little square tiles. They don't mean anything really. It's just
marker.
So if you're playing with 4 players, I think there's 6 objectives for each race on different planets on the board, and you have to get 4 of those to win the game, basically. So all you have to do is get to that place with some of your units, and then hold it till the end of the turn. You get that objective, and that's that.
It seems simple,
and it does seem quite simple. But obviously, because it's a space game, I know it's a sort of grand strategy space game, and because it's Warhammer 40,000, it's obviously a bit more complicated than that.
There's a lot of angles to it.
Yep. I mean, the basic sort of mechanics in this game are basically you're using sort of order tiles. So you've got 4 different orders. You've got your dominate, advance, strategize, and deploy.
Yep.
And you've got 2 of each of those tiles.
Yeah, so you can use an order twice.
8 tiles, yeah, but you can only use 4 tiles in a turn. So you have to put 4 order tiles down.
Yeah.
So you basically take one of your order tiles and put it on one of the square tiles on the board. What happens is that you start with, so the first player for that turn will put an order tile down on the board, and the next player puts an order tile, and you go around the board until everybody's put 4 on. But you can stack your order tiles on top of other people's. And that gives an opportunity for blocking, because what actually happens when you resolve those orders is that you flip when it's your turn, you've got to pick a stack that has one of your tiles at the top of it. And if there are no stacks with one of your tiles at the top of it, you can't do anything. You have to just skip your turn. Yeah. So there's a bit of sort of blocking there that you can do.
Yeah.
But the 4 orders, I mean, if you dominate a sector, you basically take all the resources from those planets
you've got
in that sector. On, yeah. Yep. So, and the resources are just things like, you can get reinforcement tokens, which will help you in battle. You can get some sort of little those little tokens.
There's like bonus ones.
So
you've got forge tokens.
Forge tokens, which let you sort of build better units.
Yeah, sort of resource tiles that give you discounts on buying units and things like that.
Yep. So you can get those things basically. Yeah. The advanced thing just lets you move your troops, so you can put a tile into a sector and you can move the troops into it. The strategize lets you sort of buy and upgrade cards. So this game's got a lot of cards in it. So each race has got starts with a couple of unique decks. Yeah. So there's each race has got an event deck and they've got a battle deck basically. Yeah. And the battle deck thing, I mean, we'll maybe talk about that later on actually, because the battle thing is actually probably the most
it's probably the most contentious issue.
It is quite a contentious issue. But I mean, the other thing is you can get these event cards and you can buy. Sorry, not event cards. You can't buy new event cards. The event deck obviously is the same, but there's another sort of
there's order upgrades.
Yeah, order upgrades. So you can basically make your orders better. So your little tiles, so they let you do better things. And deploy just lets you build units and structures. So you can build new units. You can put in, cities, factories. Factories let you build units on that sector, that kind of thing. So basically, you're just sort of like moving around the board, trying to get to your order tokens, defend whatever places you need to defend, stop other people getting to their order tokens, and then eventually a fight's going to break out. And this is, like we say, I think needlessly complicated.
It's when it gets down to it, it is quite simple, but in a very roundabout way. Yeah, which should be Fantasy Flight's motto.
Totally.
It's like the way that they kind of do things. Once you're playing it, it does seem very intuitive once you get into it, but there does seem to be a lot of roadblocks to your understanding.
Yeah. I mean, basically what you're doing is when a fight breaks out, you have to check your little race sheet and see what units you've got in there. Yeah. So I was the orcs, so if I had a couple of orc boys in there, then I would get, it'd tell me I'd get 2 dice for each orc boy. And they have so much health. I think 2 health for each orc boy, sort of thing. So if I had 2 orc boys going into fight against Euan's 2, whatever,
Eldar flags,
Eldar dragon men, something like that. And he would get, what was it you got? Like,
it was their most basic unit. It was two dice and they only had 1 hit point.
So you start a combat, you roll your dice. So if me and Euan have both got 4 dice, that's fine. We roll those dice, and then there's 3 different symbols on the dice. There's a gun, which is the attack. Yeah. And there's a sort of little shield with a skull on it, which is defense. Yeah. And there's a morale thing. Yeah. A little morale flag, isn't it? It's a flag.
Yeah, it's a little sort of crest thing.
Yeah, a little crest. Right. And then you'd think that you would just roll those dice and then check to see who hits. Nah, you've got to draw some cards from your battle deck as well. Yeah. And then this is where it starts to get complicated, because your cards have all got different symbols. So some of them have more guns on them, some of them have some shields, some of them might have a mixture or some morale, but they've also got some special ability. Yeah, it'd be based on what units you have. Usually I think mine, because mine the most basic units kind of got the bonus from the card. That's right, actually, because most of the cards have a sort of basic thing and a bonus if you have a certain type of unit in the fight. And it just, it can start to get really complicated, because they have, like some of them might say, like, you can add an extra die in here, or you get an extra token, which is an attack token or something that only lasts for the first or one round of combat or whatever. And then you never sort of re-roll these dice, so you always play 3 combat rounds or until somebody dies, basically, whatever comes first. And you only roll the dice once.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really bizarre.
Any game where kind of like where dice are rolled and then remain static and just sort of are used for something, it's always a weird thing because it just feels unnatural to dice.
It. So the only way that the battle actually changed over those 3 rounds was depending on the cards you played, and some of those cards could be really powerful.
Yeah.
And they could sort of do some really crazy things. I think
there's a minor deck building sort of aspect to this where you can buy upgrades to add into.
That's it. Yeah. So this is part of the strategize order. You can buy some upgrade cards for your battle deck.
Yeah.
And put them in, but you have to replace other cards. So if you always have 10 cards in your battle deck, so if you add 2 cards to that, you've got to take 2 cards out.
It's always
the idea. I think by the end of the game, I had only upgraded cards in my deck.
I think I was doing alright for upgrades.
Yeah. But I mean, some of these, I think these cards can be pretty devastating. Some of them, like they really do change the battle. But it felt a bit clunky.
It did. It was an odd system. It was. I think just the weirdness of the dice. And another thing I was just thinking there is the fact that you roll these 8 dice and there's a maximum of 8 dice.
Yeah, that each person can
which,
roll.
Again, and this seems like a needless constraint to me.
Yeah.
Because you've got 3 rounds in the battle anyway, it's not like it's going to get up into stupid numbers.
It's not
and there are like
dice.
You can put in quite a lot of units. But there's really not a lot of benefit to doing them. Put in a lot of units apart from having them there to absorb health, I suppose. Because
that's the thing. Well, I don't know. Maybe that is why they limited the dice then. Because you're throwing your extra units in, it becomes a battle of attrition instead of just like everybody hitting each other as hard as you possibly can. Because if you're just limited to 8 dice, it doesn't matter. You could throw in every single unit you have on the board into this fight, but you would still only get 8 dice. But you were pretty much by then guaranteed to win because you had more people, sort of thing. Because you could just soak up all the hits.
I suppose, yeah. It did strike me as odd at the time. But yeah, I think definitely the combat we got a lot quicker as we went on with the combat. Once we had it understood.
Yeah,
it's not that bad, but
it took us so long to get our heads around it.
Yeah,
especially when it came to the bastion structures. So you can build bastions on your planets, and they just they're basically just defensive structures, and I think they get their own dice and stuff like that. And but there was just so much confusion. We couldn't really find anywhere that clearly stated how bastions really worked. Like, because if you took wounds, when you took wounds in a fight, so say I took 3 wounds and I had my 2 orc boys who had 2 health each, that would kill one of them and I still had 1 wound to take.
Yeah.
So that would actually, I would have to knock that guy down. He would be routed.
Yeah.
Yep. And this was another weird thing about the battles. It didn't actually matter if your guys were routed. You could have an army full of routed men, and you still kept fighting. And I don't know if we got that rule wrong, but we couldn't really find anything that disproved it.
No, I think it would, because I had one card that did let you unroute. Stand one of your units back up, but I never really found myself using it to any great effect. Because I don't
get knocked back down again.
Yeah, because I don't know that it actually increases their hit points or anything like that, or gives them anything. It just does that, and it didn't really seem to have a lot of effect. But again, like you say, that might be a rule that we have messed up there.
But this is the thing. It's like when we were playing through that game, it really felt like we were getting the rules wrong. Is the feeling that I got out of it. But every time I looked in the rule book, it was like, no, we're doing this right.
Yeah.
And that was what was weird about this game. It just didn't feel intuitive to me, sort of thing.
Yeah, I had issues with things like movement. I just wasn't sure what I was allowed to do, what I was able to do.
But this is a classic Fantasy Flight thing, I think, because Fantasy Flight rule books are notoriously awful.
I know you've had to go on Board Game Geek for a few.
Anytime I get a Fantasy Flight game, I'm like, I'm definitely going to have to look something up on the internet today.
Yes, it does seem to be a frequent problem with them. I don't know. I mean, most of the games that I've played of theirs that I've generally liked, and I think I would probably give this a go again if knowing how to play it and see how we got on with it.
Yeah,
but it was pretty frustrating. To say the least.
Well, I won the game, Euan.
You did.
I won quite comfortably.
You did. John looked like he was going to race ahead at one point, but he overstretched himself and he got entangled in a war with me when I suddenly worked out how to do combat.
Oh yeah. In fact, we've got a little bit of a clip here of you going in the huff about some combat with me.
Well, yeah. I mean, it just proves that we're human. You know, we're not just podcast robots without emotions.
Well, should we have a listen to that clip, Euan?
Yeah, I think let's bare our souls here.
This is Euan when he kept throwing his units at this one planet that I owned because it had one of his objective tokens on it, and he didn't understand why I was not letting him win.
What do you mean? I've done fuck all to you. You're like, I'll defend this shitty wee planet to get in his way.
But that's because it's got 3 things in it. I'm never letting you get
Jesus Christ, I didn't see that.
You fuck off.
That's fine, I'll just go for your home planet then.
To be honest, people can have my home planet if they want. It's rubbish.
Home planets
home planets are pretty shit.
Well, I hope you're proud of yourself, Euan.
Well, as I said, you know, it's these are the things. I mean, you can hear in there my sort of like, you know, just bogus attempt at trying to sort of laugh it off. There's sort of like completely fake chuckle. Yeah, no, it's.
I mean, you're quite a laid back guy, Euan. I don't often see you particularly angry.
I don't like what this game did to me.
I was shocked.
I don't like what this game did to me at all. And that's probably one of the reasons I had difficulty with it. You know, I don't like a game that's trying to bring out this monster inside of you.
Well, I think. Well, let's give our actual verdict on Forbidden Stars then. It's left a kind of weird taste in my mouth. I think.
I don't really know what to say about it other than I think if you're a fan of those type of games, you know, it's in a mold. It doesn't do anything that another sort of space strategy doesn't do. Really, it's quite.
I mean, like most other sort of fantasy flight games, there's some sort of unique mechanics in it that they've kind of created for this game, and you know, this whole thing where you roll the dice once and then you use your cards to actually move the battle along, sort of thing, is something that's pretty unique to this game. But yeah, I don't know. Some things I feel like Fantasy Flight do these things, and you know, don't really. Some things it's brilliant, some things it's not. You know.
Yeah.
I think that they could have just got away with a sort of old-fashioned, tried and tested method. You know, rolling some dice and using some symbols for attack and defense and stuff like that. But
I guess it's nice of them to try something new.
Not to be condescending.
Yeah, so what will we rate this? I'm going to give that 5 condescending pats on the head to Fantasy Flight.
Well, I'll give that an extra pat because I won, and that extra pat's actually a smugness.
Okay, a nice smug pat.
A nice smug
after
pat.
A bit of condensation.
Condensation.
A bit of condensation dripping on their heads. So, in summation, we've got another little clip that pretty much sums up how the game went for me anyway, and probably to some extent our overall feelings about the game.
It does. It sums the game up quite nicely, I think. So here it is.
That's pish.
Right. Well, I think we've chatted enough about board games and Forbidden Stars in particular there, so let's move on to some video games.
So this last week I've been playing a bit of the new Batman game in the series, Arkham Knight. It's the final game, and apparently in the trilogy it seems like they're just ignoring Arkham Origins.
I was going to say, I thought there were 4.
Well, yeah, but this is what happens to prequels, they just get forgotten. Although one thing I'd say is, having just recently had a wee look back over Arkham City, and I played a wee bit of Arkham Asylum, a lot of the sort of the gameplay style probably takes a lot more cues from Arkham Origins, but it's just the way that they've kind of advanced the fighting style over each game.
Yeah.
It's gotten to the point now where it is probably a little bit busy. In fact, going back and playing Arkham Asylum, I was like, this is a lot slower. Just there's not as much stuff to sort of deal with in the combat. But they've added in some new elements. You've got the Batmobile, which everyone's probably been hearing about.
Yeah, I think that's the one big thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And that is an extra element to the game. It does seem slightly odd, though. The parts of the Batmobile gameplay are similar in spirit to the combat mechanics for just like fighting, basically. So you've got stealth bits with the tanks, and then sort of big ruckuses with the tanks. Right. And you're dealing with the tanks are all they're unmanned drones, so Spider-Man can get away with killing stuff. Spider-Man, I don't know why I said Spider-Man. I guess Spider-Man started to become the more interesting hero, because Batman, what I'm starting to learn through the story in this game, is a slightly odd character. There's a long sequence where he becomes slightly obsessed with this guy's handprints. This guy called Stag who lives on a blimp.
Oh, obviously.
At an early point in the game, you go up to this blimp and he's looking for handprints, and you'd think one handprint would be enough, but you have to go into the video cameras.
Well, he may have more than two hands.
Well,
this
that's
is
true.
The Batman universe.
Well, yeah. And he might have a third hand on his arse. And basically, the videos have... You hack into the video camera and you see him sort of touching one thing, and you think, right, well, that's help. That's used a logical way of dealing with the problem. And he's like, a better check for more. So you have to go into the next bit of video and check that. And then you do that about 3 or 4 times, I believe.
Yeah, well, that's because without that, there's no game.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I guess this is the thing with these games now, that this series of games, it has started to feel like a series of quite satisfying mini-games that aren't really held together by any kind of like decent narrative thread. The main plot so far, I haven't actually completed the game. There does seem to be a few twists coming, from things that they've set up, but the actual main storyline isn't that engaging, and the villains don't feel as interesting as... I mean, you've been dealing with the Joker in previous ones.
Aye.
So your main sort of antagonists aren't... They feel slightly incompetent for the most part. Because it does feel like a long space of time between them being like, oh, we're going to do this thing, and then Batman farts around Gotham for a while until you decide you're going to go and deal with one of their bombs or something they've planted.
Yeah, but the other Batman games are like that. They're all like that. I mean, well, I've only played... I completed Arkham City, and I didn't play Origins, but I played a bit of Asylum, just a little bit. And I haven't played this new one, right? And the thing is that when, after playing sort of City and stuff, I was just like, wasn't really that bothered when the newer ones came out, because it just feels like, it's just going to be the same stuff again. And if it's going to be like that, if it's going to be a game where you're just doing the same stuff over and over again, I think there has to be a decent story there.
Yeah.
And I think that's just completely lacking in the Batman games. I mean, because it is what it is. It's it's just it's a Batman universe. Him running around fighting crime and stuff like that, and being all grim.
Aye,
but
they do really go for it with the sort of the grim dark stuff in this game.
But if that's what you're into, then that's fine. I'm not really that fussed. So.
Yeah. I no longer see Batman as a credible character in that vein as the sort of anti-hero thing. So it's just. He just comes off as a bit of a dick for the most part.
Yeah. I think in the games he definitely does.
Oh, in this one particularly, he's a dick to Commissioner Gordon, he's a dick to Robin particularly.
Yeah, but I'd be a dick to Robin as well.
Yeah, it's quite easy to be a dick to him. Although there's quite a satisfying fighting sequence. So you play both as the current Robin and the previous Robin, Nightwing. I'm probably the resident comics geek, so I know some of this tedious chat.
A lot more than I
but
do.
But basically,
I go outside sometimes.
Well, I just stare at pictures of the X-Men's boobs.
Wolverine.
Yeah, I don't know, I've lost my thread completely, but basically, Batman, bit of a dick, but quite satisfying to play as in a computer game. And to be fair to these games, the one thing that I've quite enjoyed about the whole series is, despite sort of maintaining the grimdark Batman tone, they have kept in some of the wackier elements of the comics, and they allow the villains to be as cartoonish and over the top as they could be, and that's a good thing, because if I could compare this latest instalment to anything, it reminds me of the Dark Knight Rises, the third of the Nolan trilogy, and it's got to a point where it's become slightly unnecessary and bloated and
a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, and but at least the game, it has the fun elements to it. Whereas the Dark Knight Rises, I think I fell asleep through a good portion of that.
Not a fan, Euan.
It's not a bad film as such. I just thought it was like bloated is the only way to describe it, really.
I think it had to end.
Yeah, a big saggy middle thing. And I suspect that probably this game, as I say, I've not reached the end, but I suspect it's going to end with a Batman retirement or possible death of sorts. So it's good that they're capping it off where they are, and just getting away from that. Maybe trying to do something else. I think maybe we need to work on an Aquaman game.
You're so obsessed with Aquaman.
I don't really care about Aquaman that much.
I've heard you mention Aquaman.
I've maybe mentioned Aquaman once.
Quite a few times.
Well, at least I've not mentioned Namor, the Submariner. Oh God,
you're really struggling with
I
that
was
word.
really having a bad time. It's good because I think that bit of chat was terrible, so let's move on.
Alright.
Arkham Knight.
You're still playing it?
I'm still playing it. Still
Are you enjoying it
though? It's a good game. Like, you can't... The whole series, whatever criticisms you might level at it, they're fun games to play, and it's drawn me back. I mean, that's why I found myself replaying through the original, the Arkham Asylum, and hoping to move on to Arkham City afterwards. So, it's a good one. I give it...
How many crap robins would you give this?
I would give it 5 fruit bats.
Fruit bats?
Batman would be like, these aren't the kind of bats that I like. They're not dark enough. I'd be like, sorry lads, I'd have to toss them into the sea. And that would be on Bruce Wayne.
Okay, well, let's move on to something else.
Yeah, something
different.
You've played, maybe.
So I've been, it's not something, this isn't something that I picked up recently or anything. Now, according to Steam, I've been playing this for 160 hours, alright, so far. And I'm talking about the zombie horde survival crafting game 7 Days to Die.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but it sounds good.
I mean, the zombie horde survival crafting part isn't actually part of the title, as far as I know. It's just called 7 Days to Die.
Right.
And it's, I mean, it is what it sounds like. So it's a survival game where there's been a sort of some sort of zombie apocalypse basically, and there are no humans around. So you can play this. You can play this single player, or you can play it multiplayer. You can play it online. I've been playing it online, but not with not on big servers or anything like that. I've just been playing it with my friend Craig.
Right.
Because I think there are other zombie games out there, zombie survival games like H1Z1, and the other one's actually completely escaped my brain there, but there are ones like that that sort of totally lend themselves to big multiplayer things. I don't think 7 Days to Die does.
Right.
7 Days to Die is like, you don't just run into a house and find a gun and go and shoot things. It's not that kind of game.
Yeah.
Because you really have to focus on your survival in this game, sort of thing, and you have to build a base or somewhere safe to live.
So the crafting elements
and the crafting element, you don't just... You might find a gun if you go into a house, but it's pretty rare that you'll find a gun lying about. And the problem is that these guns and stuff, they'll break. You use them too much, they'll break. Ammunition's hard to find. You've got to try and make that yourself. Yeah. And, I mean, it's still an alpha, this game. And before the current version of it, which is Alpha 12, so a couple of the previous versions there, they'd thrown in some caverns that were lying littered about the world, where you could go in and you could make little tools. You could make little stone axes, or you could make pickaxes if you had iron and stuff, and go and find some more iron ore, or coal and potassium and stuff like that. So all this stuff that you'd need to make tools and weapons and bullets and gunpowder and that kind of thing.
Right.
And in Alpha 12 they have completely just bombed that. So they've got rid of quite a lot of the caverns and stuff. Apparently they still exist. Now I just started playing a new game in Alpha 12 yesterday, and even since then I think I've played quite a few hours of it, and I've wandered about that map quite a lot and found no caverns whatsoever. And I'm really, really now struggling to survive in this game. Whereas before it was kind of easy to just build up an arsenal of weaponry. Whereas now,
if you get a tactic down, maybe you've got to
and I think
you to change it.
I think it was a deliberate thing. I think it was because it was a bit easy.
Yeah,
it was a bit sort of you could just hoard everything up, and I think they wanted this game to be a struggle. And there's no story or anything to it, sort of thing. You just survive for as long as you possibly can, and if you die, you respawn and stuff. But it's just annoying. Every time you die, you lose some of your maximum health and stuff like that. So dying's a bad idea in this game. Getting it back's not as... You don't get it back as quickly as you can die in this game, put it that way.
Okay. Right? Dying's a finite resource.
But the zombies in this game are relentless.
Yeah.
They just... they're wandering about and stuff, and you can change the difficulty, so you can really mess around with it. There are some presets, but you can really mess around with it and do it to your own style and stuff. So you can make the days longer if you want, and the night not as long, or you can change it so that the zombies run at night, which is the way that me and my friend have been playing it online. So we've racked up the difficulty a bit because we've been playing it in easier difficulties. We wanted to give ourselves a challenge, and the zombies running at night really is terrifying. It is terrifying.
This in Dying Light, I'm not entirely sure I get the logic of it. Suddenly, it's been baking the day, mate.
Yeah,
but it's a nice cool night. I'm going to go for a run.
I think, but Dying Light, I think that's a sort of proper action game, isn't it?
Yeah.
But in 7 Days to Die, this is a survival thing, and the fact that the zombies run at night, if you don't get back to whatever your safe spot is, and even then it's never guaranteed to be a safe spot.
Yeah.
If you're wandering about at night,
you're in trouble.
You're in trouble because you have stamina, the zombies don't. So if you run out of stamina, you've got to start walking, and the zombies keep running.
Right. So things just for example, if you've set up some kind of shelter or something like that, at night time, would you have to sort of turn all the lights off and things like that, and then be completely quiet?
The lighting thing, I don't know. I get the feeling that the developers of this, who are called the Fun Pimps, by the way.
The Fun Pigs?
The Fun Pimps.
Fun Pimps.
Wow. I get the feeling that they might add something like that in, because this is the kind of direction that they're going in.
Right.
Whereas any little thing will set the zombies off, sort of thing.
That's quite a cool idea if they were to do something like that.
But you can get in, but the thing is that there's no guarantee that you're safe wherever you are. You could build a sort of concrete shelter sort of thing. The zombies will just relentlessly stand outside and smash the door in if they know you're in there.
Right.
They'll smash the walls in, and nothing's safe. I've seen them even tunnel underneath a building that I was hiding inside, and nearly brought the whole bloody thing down.
You showed me a picture. You did show me a picture of a hole and just two sort of massive zombies standing there.
Yeah. They don't stop. You have to, if you hear zombies outside hitting something, you've got to go outside your base and kill them before they start tunneling a hole in, But one of the things I will say about 7 Days to Die is the crafting system is getting better and better and better.
Well,
and in particular,
that's what you get from playing a game in development, I suppose.
Oh yeah, in particular the weapons. So the guns. You actually, whereas before it was just you could be able to just make a gun or find a gun sort of thing. Yeah. Whereas now you'll find pieces of guns. Oh. So you'll find pistol bits. You might maybe find a pistol grip. You might find a sniper rifle barrel and stuff like that. Okay. And once you get the schematics, which you can find in sort of in houses, you'll find bookcases and stuff that might have schematics or books about leather tanning and stuff that you can read. Once you get all those things, you can actually start putting these guns together yourself. And they added in a sort of quality system, so all the different pieces have their own sort of have their own quality level. So you can have a poor pistol grip but an excellent pistol barrel, for example, and but you can still put all those bits together, and then the gun takes an average of all those sort of qualities. The better the gun is, the more damage it does, the longer it lasts before it'll break. and that kind of thing. So
doesn't have like a cracked grip that you keep dropping,
yeah,
and then
but-
a really good barrel that shoots you in the foot.
But one of the good things is that you can still take that gun apart. So
Oh, right.
even if you've been using it, you can put it back into the crafting thing and say, right, that barrel's the worst part of it, and I've got a better one, so
Okay.
I found a better one. I'll put that barrel in there, and there you've got your gun back, and it's better than it was.
Aye.
And I think like it's things like that make me really enjoy 7 Days to Die. I think it's really good that way.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a game with a sort of gun crafting system as in depth.
Yeah.
I've seen them try to do things like, you get a new stock and things like that, or a new barrel and stuff, but that does sound quite in depth. So.
But it's kind of it's more in depth than most games would go into. But I think they've got the balance right there. I think because it's not overly complicated.
Right.
If you see what I mean, it's pretty. It's pretty like straightforward in how you would put that gun together, sort of thing. Right. So you're not like sitting there saying you need to be a bloody engineer or something like that to put some of these things together. Right. You don't. And like I say, it's a game that I've played a hell of a lot of over the different alpha releases, and it is getting better and better. And they've recently, with Alpha 12, they've added mini bikes in, so you can actually and it seems like such an effort to get all the stuff together. I've played. There's a creative mode.
Yeah.
So you can go in and just get all the bits in. I've played around in the mini bike, but you need to get so many stuff. You need to find a car battery. You need to find like make handlebars, and you need to get fuel and all this sort of thing before you can even get the thing running. Yeah. And
so this is this on early access on Steam, or do you have to pay for the?
It's an early access thing, so and I think it's about £20 at the moment.
And you'll just get the updates for the.
Oh yeah, it just updates automatically, like if all the Steam games do. It'll just update it for you. And it's one like if you like your survival games, and it's a kind of first person shooter style survival game, then I think you will enjoy 7 Days to Die. It's like I say, I really enjoy it, and I would give it 7 days out of 7.
Yeah, do you reckon you would die in those 7 days, or with the 7 days?
I'm actually quite good at surviving longer than 7 days and 7 days to die.
Is that like the main object of the game? Did they go, if you can last more than 7 days?
Yeah, I have wondered about that title.
Yeah.
I mean, it says 7 Days to Die, and at first you just think, oh well, the game will last 7 days, and then that's it. But it just goes on forever.
Aye.
But I
just seem to think
what they've done is
after.
actually I know we're kind of wrapping up talking about this, but on the 7th day in that game, a zombie horde spawns and comes at you, and you're pretty much. I think this is where you're pretty much guaranteed to die.
Oh, okay.
Because there are so many of them that come at once, and they go straight to wherever you are. That it's just crazy.
All right.
Yep. So 7 Days to Die. It's a great bunch of lads.
Excellent.
Right, well, I think we're running short on time here, Euan.
Yeah, we talked quite a lot about Forbidden Stars there.
We did.
So,
I don't know why.
Well, it's the most contentious things tend
I think so.
to draw people's conversation. So much like the Daily Mail, it's the Daily Mail of board games.
Oh dear. And I was involved in that.
Well, sometimes you have to do things you don't like.
No, I don't.
That time you did.
All right, fair enough. Well, this was episode 2, Euan. We've got through that tricky second album.
Yeah,
it was quite tricky.
Another milestone.
Yeah, we did go back and re-record a couple of these bits, didn't we?
We did. This episode is an absolute mess.
In fact, this outro, this is the 16th time.
This is, I mean, I don't know how many tracks we've got there. I can only obviously see 3, but the little cursor, the little scroll bar at the side is getting ever smaller as we go on. But yeah, no, it's we've played some lovely games this last week, Chris. These last couple of weeks.
Some lovely games, some
games, some difficult games.
Yeah.
Was there anything you wanted to bring up before we?
I briefly talked in episode 0 when I was talking about Shenmue, which I talked about at the start of the show.
Yeah. Back to that.
Yeah, see that full circle.
It's I think it's just going to be a shadow looming over this entire series.
I briefly mentioned in episode 0 that I was considering doing some streaming of the first 2 Shenmue games in celebration of the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter ending and funding.
And hopefully seeing it.
But I was a bit confused about like how I was going to actually do that because it was on a Dreamcast. So I have now figured out a way which isn't going to involve me setting up a video camera and doing something really stupid.
Alright.
So it is just going to be straight up streaming, and I don't know when I'm going to start it. It's probably not going to be anytime soon because I've got a holiday to go on and stuff, Euan.
Right, I'm sorry.
So,
don't
don't demand too much of me, man.
Serious adult stuff to do.
Yeah, that's it. I'm the main host, I can do what I like.
Right, well, being the main host, you can just sail your little ship off to
Sail
wherever
my
you
ship
want.
off.
And hire a new crew.
Yeah. So at some point I will get that set up and I will keep you guys updated. Euan, are we coming back for an episode 3?
I hope so, Chris, I really do. It's been fun so far.
I mean, because
my old fun.
Well, like I say, I'm already setting up a holiday, so I mean, I don't know if this is getting to me.
Oh, right. You just needed to get out of the country.
Being trapped in a room with you for a few hours a week is just.
Well, that's why we're keeping to a fortnightly schedule. I don't think we could have the capacity for any more than that. So, I'll see you in 2 weeks, Chris.
Aye.
Well, piss off.
Yeah. Cheers. I just like to point out that my holiday's not going to play havoc with the schedule because we've made plans.
Yes, we have. We'll probably be getting a few of these in advance. So if what you hear coming out of our mouths over the next couple of weeks seems dated and just like outright wrong, that's what we're like normally. But it's due to us having recorded the episodes.
Now we've got an excuse. Yeah. Basically, is what you're saying.
Basically, yeah. Right. Now there's a reason for
that. So thanks for listening, people. If you want to email us with any comments or criticism, insults and the like, any questions that you want us to answer on the podcast, yes, we will be happy to do so.
Yeah, we'd like to have something to talk about.
Yep, so you can do any of that on our Facebook page. You can leave us questions, comments, etc. on the Facebook page, or you can email us at firstplayertoken@gmail.com. Yep. That's your email address.
And if you are subscribing to us through iTunes, leave us a wee review. Just a little, give us a wee 5 stars, because you know. Yeah.
Unless it's a 1-star review, don't bother with that.
Yeah, well, we'll look at the 1-star reviews, don't worry. They'll probably draw our attention.
We'll get your name.
We'll send Jim Davidson round.
Well, that was a weird threat.
Well, I think as threat goes, it's pretty good.
I've just realised that this hasn't been a very tangential episode.
No, I think we've kept it on the straight and narrow, but we have probably talked a lot of crap about the stuff that we meant to talk about.
Aye. I think in episode 3 we should make up for that.
Yeah, so expect that to really be completely unfocused and tangential and
just back to our old ways.
Just wonderful stuff.
Yep. Right, thanks for listening, folks.
See you later.
We have been the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast. I'm Chris.
And I've been Euan.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.